When we picture Golden Age Hollywood, we're taught to see a very specific image. Perfect lighting, perfect smiles, stars who all seem to come from the same place, the same background, the same story, but that image only works if you don't look too closely. Because behind the studio portraits and carefully written biographies, classic Hollywood was far more mixed than it ever admitted. Not openly, not proudly, quietly, selectively, and always on its own terms. Before diversity was something studios brag about, these actors were already crossing lines, sometimes without even realizing it. Hollywood didn't ask them to lie outright. That would have been messy. What it demanded instead was simpler and far more effective. Silence. Don't explain where you come from. Don't correct the story we give you. Don't make your difference legible. Why? Because ambiguity sold better than truth. Hollywood loved exotic faces as long as they stayed vague. Spanish sounded romantic, indigenous sounded complicated. Foreign was exciting. Specific was dangerous. The system didn't erase a difference completely. It blurred it just enough to feel safe. And when the rules were enforced, they rarely sounded cruel. Studios didn't say, "You don't belong." They said, "You're not marketable." Audiences won't relate. We don't quite know where to place you. Soft language, sharp consequences. Meanwhile, white stars were allowed to fail, reinvent themselves, age, and return. Who was allowed that freedom and who wasn't? Even acceptance had limits. Hollywood's tolerance came with an expiration date. When silent films gave way to sound, when accents suddenly mattered, when politics and segregation tightened their grip, the window quietly closed. Careers didn't end because talent disappeared. They ended because the system decided it was done looking the other way. Some things were never allowed to be spoken at all. Who you loved, who you married, who you could sit beside at a premiere. These weren't private choices, they were risks. And once a truth couldn't exist in public, the person carrying it slowly stopped being welcome. This was the world these stars entered. Before the legends, before the scandals, before the fall. A system that sold fantasy, edited reality, and punished anyone who became too visible. And with that system in place, Hollywood began choosing its favorites. Number 1. Ramón Novarro, the Latin lover Hollywood edited. Ramón Novarro didn't just become a movie star. He became a fantasy Hollywood carefully designed, polished, and selectively explained. On screen, he was the silent era's ideal romantic idol, soft eyes, quiet intensity, a face that could sell longing without a single line of dialogue. Off-screen, his real identity was quietly trimmed down. Born José Ramón Gil Samaniego in Mexico, Novarro came from a family with both Spanish and indigenous Yaqui ancestry. That second part mattered, not because it changed who he was, but because it made Hollywood uncomfortable. Spanish sounded romantic. Indigenous sounded complicated. So the studio made a choice. Novarro would be Latin, but only the approved kind. This editing worked beautifully in the 1920 seconds. Novarro became one of MGM's biggest stars, leading Ben-Hur and playing princes, sheikhs, and mysterious foreigners who were just foreign enough. He could be Arab. He could be vaguely Eastern. He could be anything as long as he wasn't too Mexican and never indigenous. Hollywood loved its diversity blurry. Unlike many actors pressured to erase themselves completely, Novarro didn't hate his heritage. He spoke proudly of being Mexican and kept his Hispanic name. But the studio still airbrushed the parts that didn't sell. His identity became a performance layered on top of another performance. How much of himself was he allowed to keep, and how much had to stay invisible? Then sound arrived. Accents suddenly mattered. Ethnic ambiguity stopped being charming and started being a problem. Roles dried up. The window Hollywood had cracked open for him quietly slammed shut. Watching Novarro today, you're not just seeing a silent film star. You're watching Hollywood exploit ethnic allure while erasing its roots. He was allowed to be desirable. He was allowed to be mysterious. He was never allowed to be fully seen. Number 2. Merle Oberon. The secret Hollywood helped her hide. Merle Oberon was sold as one of classic Hollywood's great romantic enigmas. Elegant, refined, devastatingly beautiful. She starred opposite Laurence Olivier in Wuthering Heights, earned an Academy Award nomination, and embodied the kind of exotic but safe glamour studios adored. Almost everything you were told about her was false. According to her official biography, Oberon was born to respectable British parents in Tasmania. Clean, proper, white. The truth was far more dangerous for a 1930 seconds movie star. She was born in Bombay, India, to a British father and a mother of mixed Indian ancestry. In Hollywood at the time, that wasn't a curiosity, it was a career-ending liability. So the studio rewrote her life. Her grandmother became her mother. Her real mother became her maid. Birth records conveniently disappeared, and Oberon learned to guard that secret constantly. She avoided certain interviews, stayed away from places that might expose her past, and lived with the fear that one journalist could end everything. The irony was cruel. Publicists sold her as mysterious and exotic, coded praise for the very heritage she was forced to deny. The features that made her unforgettable were the same ones she was never allowed to explain. Watching her performances now, especially roles centered on isolation and longing, adds an uncomfortable layer. She wasn't just acting an outsider, she was living as one. Merle Oberon didn't just perform in Hollywood fantasies, she survived one. Number 3. Dorothy Dandridge, the star Hollywood wouldn't sit beside. Dorothy Dandridge should have been unstoppable. She had movie star beauty, a voice that could melt a room, and a presence that made the camera lean in closer. When she appeared on screen, Hollywood didn't need to explain her. She simply belonged there. In 1954, she made history as the first black woman ever nominated for the Academy Award for Best Actress for Carmen Jones. Hollywood applauded. And then it panicked, because Dorothy didn't fit where the industry needed her to fit. Born to parents of mixed black, white, Native American, and Mexican ancestry, Dandridge embodied a kind of beauty Hollywood didn't know how to manage. She was too glamorous for the narrow roles written for black women and too black for the romantic leads reserved for white actresses. She didn't blur easily. She stood out clearly, and that clarity became a problem. After Carmen Jones, logic said doors would open, prestige roles, romantic leads, longevity. But Hollywood logic worked differently. The industry couldn't imagine her kissing a white leading man on screen. At the same time, it refused to let her fully claim black romantic roles, still trapped inside stereotypes. One director famously told her she was not black enough and not white enough. The translation was simple. You are perfect but inconvenient. Visibility became the punishment. The more undeniable Dorothy's talent was, the more uncomfortable the system became. On Oscar night, she was celebrated for breaking barriers and still seated apart from her white peers, honored and segregated in the same breath. Applause without belonging. As roles dried up, Hollywood began pushing her toward the very images she had tried to escape. Tragic women, broken figures, financial strain followed, relationships collapsed. The promise Hollywood dangled that excellence would eventually be rewarded was never meant to be fulfilled. What makes Dorothy Dandridge's story especially cruel is that she didn't refuse to play the game. She didn't rebel publicly. She didn't challenge the system in speeches. She simply existed too clearly. Her beauty was undeniable. Her talent was undeniable. And that left Hollywood with nowhere to hide its fear. The industry loved the idea of Dorothy Dandridge. It just didn't know where to put her once she became impossible to ignore. She died at just 42 years old, carrying the weight of being first and the cost of being visible. Watching her today is bittersweet. You see the future of Hollywood standing right there on screen, and you see the moment the system pulls back. Dorothy Dandridge broke the barrier. Hollywood made sure she paid for it. Number 4. Carol Channing. The family secret Broadway never knew. For decades, Carol Channing was impossible to miss. Tall, blonde, and loud in the best way. "Hello, Dolly" made her a walking exclamation point of American showbiz, so bright and white that almost no one thought to ask questions. But she carried a secret that could have ended her career before it began. Her father was black. He told her when she was 16, right as the spotlight was starting to find her. His warning was blunt. If people know, you'll be stigmatized. The curtain might never rise. How many careers were built on that same quiet threat? So Carol chose a survival. She didn't deny her heritage publicly, and she didn't confirm it either. She locked it away and did what the industry rewarded most, hit her marks. She danced, belted, and became Dolly Levy. while the public applauded a fantasy that required her silence. What does it mean to be adored by millions, yet never fully known? The irony is sharp. Hello, Dolly later became famous for all-black productions starring Pearl Bailey, and years later, Whoopi Goldberg. Carol celebrated them loudly, while most people had no idea how personal that history was. When she finally revealed her background in her memoir at age 80, she didn't whisper it, she beamed. Her story isn't about shame. It's about an industry that demanded quiet, and a woman who lived long enough to speak on her own terms. Number 5. Jennifer Jones, the heritage Hollywood preferred not to mention. Jennifer Jones was sold as innocence itself, soft-spoken, virtuous, almost angelic. Studio biographies emphasized her safe lineage and left other details in the shadows, including her Cherokee ancestry through her mother. It wasn't always denied, it was simply not discussed. Why was private acceptable only when it kept the public comfortable? Jones learned the old Hollywood strategy: don't lie, don't fight, just don't talk. Then came Duel in the Sun, where she played Pearl Chavez, labeled a half-breed, torn between desire, shame, and violence. The role was scandalous, hypersexualized, and controversial, everything her public image wasn't supposed to be. Audiences gasped. Critics argued, and no one publicly connected the film's racial tension to Jones's own mixed background. Behind the scenes, producer David O. Selznick tightly managed her career. Whether the silence was strategy or agreement, the result was the same. Jennifer Jones could explore identity only as fiction, never as biography. Watching her now, especially in stories about forbidden boundaries, there's an added tension, proof of how narrow the path was for anyone who couldn't be neatly placed. And if even she had to stay vague, who got to be specific? Number 6. Freddie Washington, the star who refused to pretend. Freddie Washington had the kind of face Hollywood dreamed about and quietly panicked over. Light skin, striking eyes, flawless features. In the 1,930 seconds, she could have passed as white without anyone blinking. Studios noticed, casting directors noticed, and they made her an offer wrapped in a velvet smile. Just don't say you're black. Freddie said no. Born to a black mother and a white father, Washington understood exactly what she was giving up. Passing meant leading roles, romance, and longevity. Claiming her black identity meant maids, side characters, or nothing at all. But for her, erasing herself was worse than losing fame. "I am a negro, and I am proud of it," she said, in an industry built on silence. Hollywood's irony was merciless. Her most famous role came in Imitation of Life, where she played a light-skinned black woman who chooses to pass as white, rejecting her mother and her roots. On screen, the character denies who she is. Off-screen, the actress refused to do exactly that. When studios pushed her to cross the color line for real, Washington walked away. She never became a movie star. She became something rarer, for that era an artist who chose integrity over illusion. Number 7. Lena Horne, the star who wouldn't play their game. Lena Horne entered Hollywood with beauty that stopped rooms cold and a voice that could wrap itself around a melody. Born to parents of African American, European, and Native American ancestry, she arrived with something else that made studios uneasy: boundaries. At the top of her list was what she would not do. No maids, no jungle girls, no roles designed to make white audiences feel superior. MGM signed her anyway, and then tried to keep her at arm's length. She was allowed to sing. She was allowed to be glamorous. She was not allowed to exist naturally inside the story. Her musical numbers were filmed separately, so they could be easily cut when movies played in the segregated South. Imagine being talented enough to be hired, but too threatening to be left in the final edit. Lena noticed, and she pushed back. She demanded an anti-stereotype clause in her contract. She refused dialect. She rejected humiliation. The cost was predictable. Fewer scenes, fewer films, plenty of resentment. Hollywood loved Lena Horne the image. It struggled with Lena Horne the person. So she took her power elsewhere, to nightclubs, concert halls, and eventually activism, using her visibility to expose what the industry preferred to hide. Number 8. James Edwards, the actor who made Hollywood uncomfortable. James Edwards didn't look like the stereotypes Hollywood preferred. And that was exactly the problem. Born to parents of mixed African American and Native American ancestry, he brought intelligence and restraint to a screen that rarely allowed black men either. His breakthrough role in Home of the Brave forced audiences to confront racism not as a cartoon villain, but as something ordinary and institutional. For viewers, it was eye-opening. For studios, it was alarming. Edwards didn't soften his presence, he sharpened it. He criticized Hollywood's racism openly. He worked with the NAACP. He pushed for roles that reflected real lives. Work slowed, opportunities narrowed. Hollywood preferred actors who didn't ask questions. Edwards asked too many. Number 9. Canada Lee, the actor who paid for saying no. Canada Lee was never meant to be quiet, and Hollywood never forgave him for that. Born to parents of mixed African American and Native American ancestry, Lee brought dignity and intellect to roles rarely written for black men. In films like Lifeboat and Body and Soul, he refused caricature. But Lee didn't stop at choosing better roles. He spoke openly about racism. He supported civil rights. During the Red Scare, that made him dangerous. His name appeared in red channels. Offers vanished. Phones stopped ringing. He was given a chance to save himself. All he had to do was name names before the House Un-American Activities Committee. He refused. The stress destroyed his health. Canada Lee died of a heart attack at 45. Watching him today, there's weight behind his eyes that feels prophetic. He wasn't just acting injustice, he was living it. These artists didn't fail in Hollywood. They were punished for refusing to disappear. Number 10. Anthony Quinn. The man Hollywood cast as everyone but himself. Anthony Quinn may hold a quiet Hollywood record. No one was asked to play more ethnicities than him: Greek, Arab, Italian, Native American, Mongolian, Jewish, Mexican. If a role needed an accent and a sense of mystery, Quinn was already in wardrobe. Born in Mexico to a mother of indigenous Aztec ancestry and a father of Irish-Mexican descent, Quinn knew exactly who he was. Hollywood did not. His mixed features made him useful, not respected useful. He was cast as whatever the script required, as long as it wasn't too specific, and never simply Anthony Quinn. Early in his career, he was handed a steady diet of ethnic villains and Indians, roles that came with feathers, scowls, and short life expectancies. It wasn't dignity, it was survival. Quinn endured, outworked the system, and slowly climbed. His breakthrough came with Viva Zapata, where he won an Academy Award playing the brother of Emiliano Zapata portrayed by Marlon Brando. The irony was sharp. The Mexican actor supported the non-Mexican lead. Even at the top, the trap never fully opened. Quinn once joked, "I've played so many nationalities, I've forgotten what I am." It landed as humor because it was true. Hollywood didn't see a man. It saw a toolbox. And while Quinn achieved fame and longevity, he was rarely allowed to exist on screen as himself. Number 11. Josephine Baker. The superstar America refused to claim. Josephine Baker didn't leave America to chase fame. She left because America made it clear it didn't want her. Born in Street Louis to a black mother and a father of Spanish and Native American descent, Baker grew up brilliant, defiant, and already too much for a country obsessed with control. In the United States, her talent was tolerated, but only barely. She was mocked, segregated, and reduced to caricature. America loved her body on stage, not her humanity of it. So, in 1925, Baker made a radical choice. She went to Paris, and Paris crowned her. In Europe, her mixed heritage wasn't a problem to manage. It was part of her mystique. She became a sensation headlining, starring in films, draped in couture and admiration. The same woman America laughed at was suddenly one of the highest-paid entertainers in the world. The contrast was brutal. When Baker returned to the U.S., critics turned vicious. Restaurants denied her service. Newspapers attacked her. International fame couldn't protect her from American racism, so she chose her side. She became a French citizen, worked as a spy for the French resistance during World War II, and later adopted children of different races, her rainbow tribe, to prove a better world was possible. Josephine Baker wasn't rejected by Hollywood alone. She was rejected by her country. And when she died, France buried her with military honors, something America never offered while she lived. Number 12. Ricardo Montalban, the man who played along while pushing back. Ricardo Montalban spent his entire career doing something Hollywood found deeply confusing. He played along and pushed back at the same time. Born in Mexico to Spanish immigrants with distant indigenous ancestry, Montalban entered an industry that liked Latino actors as long as they stayed decorative, vague, and interchangeable. Fortunately for Hollywood, he had the face for it. Handsome, controlled, racially flexible. He could be molded into whatever the script required. Native American, Middle Eastern prince, Japanese character, mysterious foreigner with an accent that drifted freely across continents. Like Anthony Quinn, he was valuable precisely because he could be reshaped. And like Quinn, Hollywood rarely cast him as Mexican. Too specific, too real. Instead, Montalban was offered elegance without identity, charm without context, and he delivered. He sang in musicals, stood tall in epics, and later became immortal as Mr. Rourke on Fantasy Island. Smiling as he welcomed guests into fantasies Hollywood itself refused to examine. But behind the smile was resistance. Montalban openly criticized Hollywood's treatment of Latino actors, calling out the lack of dignity and opportunity. In 1970, he founded the Nosotros Foundation to support Hispanic performers and challenge stereotypes from within the industry. He accepted imperfect roles not because he believed in them, but because survival created leverage. That contradiction reached pop culture immortality with Khan in Star Trek, brownface, exaggeration, villainy. And yet Montalban infused the role with intelligence, menace, and gravity that transcended the stereotype. He made the part bigger than the box it came in. Ricardo Montalban understood something many others didn't. You don't always dismantle the system by refusing entry. Sometimes you enter, stand tall, and quietly rewrite the rules from inside. A smile can be a weapon. Montalban proved it. Taken together, these stories reveal a system, not a coincidence. Hollywood didn't reject difference outright. It curated it. It blurred identities, edited biographies, and rewarded silence. It allowed actors to be desirable, mysterious, and temporary, never specific, never permanent, never fully seen. And the moment visibility became unavoidable, punishment followed. Some passed, some stayed quiet, some refused, some left the country entirely. None of them failed. The system did. When these stars were alive, they were called difficult, unplaceable, or problematic. After they died, they became pioneers. Hollywood loves legacy. It just hates accountability. So the final question isn't whether Golden Age Hollywood was diverse. It's whether it was ever willing to let those people belong. And that question doesn't end in the past. Because even now, the industry still asks the same thing. Are you being chosen for who you are? Or for how easily you can be blurred? Leave your thoughts in the comments. And if you believe these stories still matter, share this video. Because visibility shouldn't be a punishment. And belonging should never be conditional.